Hello again from Firefly Ministry. Last week, Pastor Fuller began a three-part series focusing on Elijah's last trip before God miraculously took him to heaven. But Elijah didn't make that trip alone. He was joined by Elisha. The Bible story of Elijah and Elisha is found in both Old Testament books of the Kings. After Elijah's victory over the prophets of Baal at Mount Carmel, he fled in fear from the evil Queen Jezebel, who had sworn to kill him because of his acts. Now, after reaching Mount Horeb, God told him to anoint two kings as well as Elisha as a prophet. This he did, and Elisha promptly became his companion. That's where Pastor Fuller picked up the story with last week's message, First stop, Gilgal. In 2 Kings 2, Elijah and Elisha both crossed the Jordan River on dry land. Now, Elisha begins to understand that Elijah would soon be taken away, and Elisha asks for a double portion of Elijah's spirit. Elijah agrees, but with one stipulation, and that is that Elisha must be present when God takes him away. Thus, the three stages for Pastor Fuller's message: first Gilgal, Bethel, and finally Jericho. Now, I don't spend much time on Facebook, or for that matter, any social media. But I do have a few groups that occasionally catch my eye. And that's what happened this week. It was from an archaeological group, and the posting was concerning Jericho. I read it with great interest and thought it would provide a good background context for the message on Jericho. So I'm going to wait to share that with you then. But what I thought I would do this week is to provide you a little more color on Gilgal and Bethel. First, Gilgal. Gilgal is known as Israel's central gathering place and is mentioned 39 times in the Bible. It's the place where the Israelites camped after crossing the Jordan River just before God miraculously delivers Jericho into their hands. The Hebrew name Gilgal means circle of standing stones. That's most likely because of the 12-stone memorial that Joshua erected after crossing into the Promised Land. Now, Bethel. Bethel was located about 12 miles north of Jerusalem. It stood as a major crossroad and a trading center. Its north-south roads passed through the hilly country, and its east-west roads led as a route from Jericho to the Mediterranean Sea. Only Jerusalem is mentioned in the Old Testament more frequently than the town of Bethel. In Hebrew, Bethel means house of God. It's first mentioned in the Bible in connection with Abraham. Genesis 12:8 tells us that Abraham built an altar to the Lord there. And then Genesis 13:3 and 4 says that he worshiped there on his return from Egypt. Originally, the city was named Luz, but Jacob renamed it after he stopped for a night's rest and had a dream of a stairway stretching from earth to heaven. Angels were climbing up and down the stairway as God stood watching from the top. It was there that God revealed himself to Jacob as the God of his fathers. When he woke up, he declared, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." Jacob set up a sacred pillar there and named the place Bethel. He consecrated the site as a place to worship by changing the name from Luz to Bethel, that meaning house of God. In the coming years, the Ark of the Covenant would be kept at Bethel. Soon after David's son Solomon died, the kingdom was divided. Now, to discourage pilgrimage to Jerusalem, King Jeroboam, king of the 10 northern tribes, set up 2 temples, one in Bethel and the other in Dan. And in each he erected a golden calf. More than once, God sent prophets to preach to Bethel. Their frequent lapses into idolatry caused the messages of judgment and condemnation to be delivered. The name Elijah means, "The Lord is my God." He lived in a turbulent time for God's people. His strong commitment to God confirmed that God does not change in dire circumstances. And Elisha's name, what does it mean? It means my God is salvation. His ministry was one to call the people back to a saving faith. In this week's message, On to Bethel, Pastor Fuller continues to draw lessons from the ministry of two of the most notable prophets of the Old Testament Scriptures. I want to invite you to join us in our sanctuary this Sabbath for Pastor Fuller's message on Elijah's journey to Bethel. But if you can't do that, be sure to visit us on Facebook or YouTube for our Sabbath services. And until then, have a blessed week.